Welcome back. This video will provide some basic training for form modification. This video is going to be very informal because it's almost inevitable that as I teach you how to create forms, something will be a little bit out of whack or just not perfect. So please bear with me as I just speak to you in a very casual manner here. We're going to create a new form, and to do that, I'm going to go to the Forms module, and maybe I'll choose a marketing form. And then over here, I'm going to choose this form here to build my form. I have 50 separate buttons here that I can, or layouts, screens that I can go to. But before I do that, I'm going to click this area here so I can name that button, and that way I won't forget where I've put my new form. Well, the form that I want to create is called Hearing Survey, and I just copied and pasted that from a, let's say, a Word document that I already had this particular form in Word, but I just want to put it into HearForm. Well, unfortunately, you can't just copy and paste the entire form and have it be exactly the way it was in Word or in Excel or something else. It's not terribly difficult, but there is a method to do this. So this is not just a word processor. This is a database that's going to automatically merge information without you having to import or export, I should say, anything. So I've just changed the name of the button so far. There's really not much more, but I have to click the button here, and that takes me to Form Marketing 10, you can see in the upper left area. Well, another thing I may want to do is not just change the name of the button, but I may want to change the name of the layout itself so that I can find it easier in my drop-down list of choices on the home screen. So to do that, I'm going to click Edit Layout, and then I'm going to slide this over so you can see all my other tools over here. And I'm going to click the pencil icon in the upper left area, and then change that from Form Marketing 10 to Hearing Survey. Now I could include that in my Layouts menu. I'll show you what that does. Let me exit the layout, save my change. By doing that, I've put that Hearing Survey in this very limited drop-down list of choices. You generally don't need to do that because you're going to be able to get to the Hearing Survey from another area, as we've discussed in the first forms video. So let me go back to the pencil here and uncheck that. But if you have a really important layout that you want to get to from virtually anywhere in the main HearForm file, then you can include that in the menu. So I'm going to just click OK there, and now let's talk about how to actually build the form. I've already got some text in a notepad area off to the side here, and that's what I'm going to be copying it from. So for example, let's just start and show you what I'm about to do. I've already copied that title, so now I'll just copy this. I generally say click Control-C on my keyboard, but you can do it that way. I'll move this off screen now. And it's important to get the correct tool. By default, the arrow tool is selected when you go edit a layout, typically for a form or a letter. But I need this T, this text tool. Now if I double click it, it locks it. So let me put it back to normal. If I just click it once, now I have a text tool or a cursor here. But if I want to lock it so that it doesn't automatically revert back to the arrow tool, I can click it again, and now I have that locked. So I'll leave it locked for just a minute. Then I'm going to click on the layout here. But FileMaker has a slightly annoying habit of making the text that you paste super wide, way wider than you want. And you just kind of have to live with that and bring it back to where it belongs. So I'm just going to click here and press Control-V, Victor, or I could again right-click and select Paste. So let's just do this. And notice how it went way off to the side. Don't know why it does that, but we again just have to live with that until they fix it. So I'm going to grab that handle in the lower right and just put it back where it belongs, slide over a little bit here. And now I have a text block. So this text block, I'm going to color it just so you can see it a little bit better. Normally you wouldn't necessarily need this colored. It's not filled in with a color by default, but I'm going to change that to green or any other color. We'll change that back to white later. I just want you to see that I'm going to be playing with blocks here, different parts, or as they call them, objects. I think I may also want to copy the title of the form, so I'll get my text tool again. And another annoying thing that happens sometimes when you paste there, I don't know why, but FileMaker says, oh, you must want that super tall and not be able to read it. Well, no, I want to read it, and I want it right there. Okay, good. So I want that to be larger, and there's a couple of ways to take that text block, which is different than the green one. I use keyboard shortcuts all the time because I really like them, and there's a control key that, let's see if I can show you right here. If I want to align that text center, then I can do the control and that slash right there. I can also align left with the control key and that symbol or this symbol, and then I can do a full alignment, but we generally are going to do center or left. So let me just do that, and then I have it centered in my text block. That allows me then to maybe grab the text block and bring it way over there, and then slide it over to this area here, which is showing my page margin. So if your page margin is not showing, then you can come over here and show your page breaks, which shows the bottom of it, or even your page margin that shows how it's actually going to print here. I'm going to hide that particular one for now. And I'm just showing you that because let's color that green or something, or not green, but blue or something like that, just so it stands out a little bit. We'll color it white before we actually finish the form. So notice that this is aligned top, and we may not want that. I really prefer, generally, it depends on what it is, but if it's by itself, I kind of like to align that center, so or left center. But now I have, when I stretch this, it kind of pulls it with it, and it just makes it look a little bit nicer. Now you could, for example, color this and leave it colored. Maybe a very light over here. I'm on this panel here with the palette. You have a variety of different tool panels here, and I'm going to color that, for example, a very light gray, just for our purposes. Well, I need the text bigger, so I could press Control Shift and the greater than arrow, but let me just show you a couple things here. Up under Format, I believe, and I just do these things by default, so I'm going to go to Size, and here it tells us how to increase the size if you like keyboard shortcuts. Control Shift greater than symbol, or make it smaller with Control Shift less than symbol. So we'll just do that, and I'm going to make it bold. Well, I could click the bold button here. That's just very easy, but again, I'm used to pressing Control Shift B because I like keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to make that bigger, and now I've made that title probably way bigger than we should have it, but I just wanted you to see. So Control Shift less than symbol, and now it's a little bit smaller. Okay, so that's the title of that. Now let's stop and save our change. I'm going to exit the layout up here, and actually before I do, I'm going to go to my preferences. I have my system. I don't recommend you do this. Do as I say, not as I do, I'm sorry. But I don't want you to save your changes automatically, at least not at the beginning, because if you make a mistake, I want you to have the option to say, oops, I messed up, I don't want to save it. And I'll show you what I mean. So now when I exit the layout, it asks me, would you like to save changes? And I will save my changes. Otherwise, if you say no, then everything you just did is lost, sadly. So use caution when doing that. Let's preview the form so far. Really not much to it yet, but we'll preview that by clicking the preview button. And now you see, as I scroll out a little bit, that I just have the beginnings of a form. At the very top, where you couldn't see it before, is the assigned letterhead for that particular office location. Okay, let's go back into layout mode. I pressed the Control key and letter L, but you could have pressed up here, View Layout Mode, Control L, or you can edit the layout in the far upper right in most cases. If you're in a table view, viewing something as a spreadsheet, then the edit layout typically won't be there, and instead you'll have a different option to customize your table columns. So let's go back into layout mode. I'll click it here, and now you see these tools that appear on the far right. So let's continue by building our form. As a general rule, I like to keep a form built into smaller parts. I could have copied and pasted all of the text that I had in my other document, but then I wouldn't have the maneuverability, the ability to customize certain areas of it. So if you have them broken into smaller segments, then you can kind of manipulate that easier where you want it to be on the document itself or the layout. And as you'll see in just a minute, I'm going to copy something from my other area and then come over here, and I can actually paste it without selecting the text tool. It selected it for me as soon as I pasted that. But what I'm basically saying is please answer the questions, and this is essentially the way we want you to answer them. So I'm going to maybe make those bold. I just Control Shift B, or again you can come over here and click the bold button there. if your bar is showing. So again, you may need to sometimes view certain things and make sure your formatting bar or other bars, play around with that. There's some nice options in there. So again, we'll just leave that white for the time being. And now I'm going to start asking some questions. So I've just copied some more text, and I don't have to again get the text tool. I think it automatically will put that there for me. So I've got this as a text block, and I could just leave this as an individual text block, or let me copy the rest of my text and show you. You could also paste it all just like that. So now you have all of that in one text block. This is a text block, that's a text block, and essentially this is a text block as well. Now, by the way, the header is something you generally want to stay away from. That's where your letterhead is. We have some buttons, as you can see up there. I can control and click that header to get it out of the way if I want to. The same is true of body. If I scroll down, I could see the body area, but there are two different parts of the layout, and the header is generally off limits. That's where we have our buttons up here and our layout, our letterhead rather, and so you want to leave that alone. So, okay, another thing to keep in mind is, as I scroll over to the left, I think it's all the way over, I don't really like the white space there. I want to give a little bit more white space. As you probably know, that white space is important to most people who view a form or a letter, and the more white space, the better in many cases, at least to a point. So I'm just gonna kind of position this right there. Gives me a little bit of nice border here. And then I can come over to this tool palette, and using this ruler, that first tool, it really is helpful to be able to then see where, in this case, I'm 26 pixels from the left. Now your HearForm may be set to, see how I click the word, the IN, that's inches, centimeters. I'm clicking on the PT right now. I really prefer points or pixels here because it's, for me anyway, it's more precise. So I would recommend that you leave it at PT or pixels, so you can see, okay, this is 26 pixels from the left, happens to be 170 from the very top of the layout. It's the rightmost part of it is 551 pixels from the far left, and then the bottom of this text block is 247 pixels from the very top. Now, as I resize that, you'll notice now it's 229 pixels from the bottom of this is from the top. So that can really come in handy when you want to place things properly. Here's what I mean. We've clicked on it. I see it's 26 pixels from the left. I'm going to click on this and maybe make that just a bit smaller. Sometimes you want to give some room to grow depending on the font and whether it's cross-platform. Macs may look at your fonts slightly different than a Windows machine. But now notice here it says it's 28 pixels from the left. Well, if I want it to line up exactly here, then I can click here and either type in 26 like that, and it just scooted that over, or I could kind of drag it over, or use, if I want to be precise, I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard. You can't see me doing that, but right next to the control key on the right middle of the keyboard, I can just slide that over and then make sure it says 26, and there it is. So sometimes it's just as easy to type it in, and sometimes you want to just move it yourself. So again, we have that text block, and then let's do the same thing here. You may want to get it kind of close sometimes, or again, I could, let's say it's way off, I can just type in 26, press tab on the, so it moves to the next field, and then that moves that over. So you may just say, okay, I need a little more white space here, and that looks pretty good. The problem is that we don't have any almost always, half the time, occasionally never, buttons here, so we'll have to create those in just a minute. So we really can't have these lined up there. Instead, we kind of have to create something underneath these, perhaps, as you'll see in just a minute. So let me pause for just a minute, and then I'll change something. So I paused because I wanted to evaluate this myself and not have you wait for me to figure something out. But this is just something I found on the internet, wanted to use as an example for you. But I think I'm going to need a little bit more room, because I'm going to have to put almost always, half the time, occasionally, and never within the body of the text. If they're going to circle that, they can't just circle it up at the top. So to do that, I'm going to give myself a little bit more room. I want to maximize the space here, so I'll slide that up. I'm actually going to put that off to the side for a minute, and then I'm going to move this up. It's still a separate text block. It's still 26 pixels from the left. And as I scroll down using the wheel on my mouse or the scroll bars, I'm going to maximize that. Now let me take the, let me save my change by exiting and saving. And then I'll come back. Occasionally you may just want to do that so that whatever you're doing is saved, and then you don't feel like you're going to waste your time if something went wrong. Let's say your computer crashed or whatever. You just want to save occasionally. So I believe there is a save button. I don't use it very often because I'm just constantly doing that. But so what I'm going to have to do is make sure that all this will fit. And I'm going to grab the part called body and slide this down. And oh, what's that? It's a squiggly line that's just like on the right side. And that shows me my page margin. So I have to have this body part above the squiggly line. And I usually like to not just be a little bit. I like to give myself a little bit more, because some printers will interact with those margins differently than others. So I like to give a little bit of room. Otherwise it can sometimes print an extra blank page, and we don't want that typically. So now I know how much room I have to work on this form. And I think what I'm going to have to do is something like this. Let's just go, I'm going to make this text block wider by stretching it here. And I'm going to give myself a horizontal look here, and I probably would want to separate these. Now this is where I could use a bullet point to make it look a little nicer, maybe a little extra space there, because generally you're going to have seniors looking at this with perhaps limited vision. So you may just want to make this a bit easier for them. So again, I'm not trying to be perfect with this, but now I have a text block that I can kind of just copy and put underneath these. And maybe I don't want that to be bold after all, so I'll just kind of put it that way. So now I can copy that and come over here. Let's zoom in so you can see it just a little bit better. So now I have these sentences all together, and I don't know if that's going to look well or not. You get the idea. This isn't necessarily a perfect form, but you get the idea that they're going to read this, and maybe you want to make the question bold or larger. And so I've just Control-Shift-B and made just the question bold. And this part could actually be, didn't mean to move that. Let's click here. This could actually be a little bit smaller text even. So I'll copy that so I don't have to redo it over and over. And maybe I can make all of these bold at once. And then I'm just basically going to copy this right here. Let's see if it keeps it. So see how I can just paste that. I'm just hitting enter, paste. Now I may run out of space because I'm asking a lot of this form, but we'll see how close. We're getting pretty close here, but you get the idea anyway. So what I'm doing then is basically creating a form based on, let me save my changes real quick. Let's preview how this is going to look based on just some other information I had. And this may not be the kind of thing you want, but this is where you would have the patient circle whichever one is most important to them. See, now there are ways to make boxes, or just to say yes or no or things like that. So we're going to cover that in the more advanced video. And you can also make the form interactive so that instead of just printing it out, you could actually have them fill it out on an iPad or something, and by tapping on the yes or no button, it actually would save the information so you have it stored digitally. This is simply designed, as I preview it here, this is designed as a form that you would print out and hand to the patient. Okay, now we're not done with it, but for our purposes for training, I think you get the idea here. Let's go back to the home screen and look over here to the right, where the forms are stored a number of different places. But I don't remember if I put that in there. I didn't. So I'm going to hit edit, and I could type it in or could paste it in if I happen to have it. So I'm just going to put, I have a hearing evaluation satisfaction survey, but I'm going to just put underneath there hearing survey, type it in, paste it in, or whatever. I think that's how it's spelled. We'll find out. Then what I could do is I'll click off to the side and back into it, and then I'll say hearing survey. Let's see if I can preview it now. And there it is. Good. So that worked. That was the name. And again, I messed up the bottom. It's not complete. So I may have to tighten things up. I think I'll show you how to do that real quick too. But you see, now that I've added that form, it's real simple to pull up one or more patients and you have a form just that easy. I left it green, and you may want to do that or not, but it's real easy to pull that up and just click print or email that form afterwards. And it just really makes it easy to digitize a lot of the things that you're working with. So I'm going to actually, while I'm there, instead of go find that form, it's really nice. You just pull it up and click the arrow here, and that'll go right to the form pretty fast. So I just wanted to show you something then. So this is all one text block right here, and so I can work on it all at once. So I'll just press Control A, which is select all basically, and I'm highlighting that whole text block. Why would I do that? So that I can, I have to have my text tool, by the way. If I did Control A in regular mode, then it highlights all my objects. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to be in the text field. When I highlight Control A now, just highlights the text itself. So what I'm going to do is come over to the right. I wanted to show you this. This can help sometimes because forms are they're tricky, and they have to be precise sometimes for them to look good and work all on one page. So as I scroll down here with the scroll bar, I have some other options, and learning this is pretty cool because then it empowers you to do all kinds of things. But right now it's set to just the standard number 1 in height. But I may want to change that. And watch what happens when I type 0.8 or 0.9, whatever you want, and then press the tab key. Then what it just did is it made it tighter. So let's zoom out and show you what I mean. See now how now I have some extra space at the bottom. I want to pull that up. I don't want that to be down below the body there. So now I could perhaps get my text tool, and I can copy this and the space or line above it, and now I have a little bit more room to put my other answers, essentially, or what they would circle. So this is just, it's still going to be a little too tight. I messed up there. Let me put it here. So I don't know that it might make it. We'll find out. So this turned into a long video, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to make sure that there's no extra. You want to do this sometimes with forms and letters. See how there's extra stuff after that? I don't want that. So I'm going to backspace. Otherwise, you can't grab and make the text block any smaller. Let's delete that so we don't have a bunch of stuff. Please, it says do not remove this text block, so please don't do that. There's important reasons why, so don't remove that little grayed out text block, although you can. I don't want you to, please. So I'm going to move this up just a hair so it's not as close to the edge, and it just barked at me a little bit, but I'll move it up there. And maybe move this up a little bit. And now I'm going to come over here, and now that that's highlighted, I'm going to change that by scrolling up. It's not visible until you scroll up again. And I'll change that to white. I could just make it invisible, but white is a solid color that now I can grab the box a little bit easier. So it's solid instead of see-through. So I think we've done pretty good there. This is taking up some extra space, so you may even say, well, I'm going to make that line a little bit shorter. Do you have trouble following a conversation when 2 or more people are talking at the same time? You could, if you needed, you could maybe just change that to the number 2, and you can just say 2 or more, because we assume they're not animals talking. So that just gave me a little of extra space there, so you can kind of play around with it. Anyway, let's save our change. We'll exit. You didn't need to do anything else today anyway, did you? So here we go, and let's preview that. And so now we have, although here's something interesting. I'm kind of glad this happened. Notice it says, do you have trouble to remember? Oh, wait a minute, now it's on a different line. Well, sometimes when it prints or previews, it's different than when you're working on the layout. So it looks like it's fine here. What's going on? Well, I may have to give a little more breathing room with this text block here, see? So I'm going to give myself even more room than I thought. And now let's save our change and see if it looks better. Now it all fits. So sometimes mistakes are good when they happen to me, so that you can see what might happen to you. Otherwise you get frustrated and think that you're doing something wrong when you may not be. So again, let's go back to the home screen. We have our hearing survey still there. I can preview it, and there's our form that we just created. You may not like the form, you may not like the format, but you get the idea. And please do watch the other video on advanced form. That's going to actually be longer, but for people who want to get really good at creating some really nice looking forms, then we'll be able to create those with you. And we always say we'd like to teach you to fish and feed you for a lifetime, using that old phrase. So thank you for taking the time to watch this today, and hopefully you'll be interested in doing advanced form creation. Thanks again.